My name is Bob Longmire. I'm with Public Sector Personnel Consultants, and we're the ones doing the classification and compensation study for the city. So I want to walk through a little bit of what those terms are, a little bit of what maybe the study is and what the study isn't, and then pause to have questions through each natural section. So if you have any questions, we definitely have time to answer those today. But we're doing the classification and compensation study. Ultimately, that's an overly complicated way of saying we're trying to answer 3 questions for every job at the city. We're trying to say, first, does your job title make sense? Does the job description accurately reflect what you do? And then third, and usually what the employees tend to care the most about, is what's the going market rate? If you don't sell the house, if you don't pull the kids out of school, if you commute in a different direction, what would they pay you? So that's what we're going to try to answer. So we'll talk more about each one of those 3 phases here in a little bit, or each one of those 3 questions. But that's maybe the easiest way to understand classification and compensation and what the study is. We'll talk here in a minute about what the study isn't, but just maybe right up front. Again, my name is Bob Longmire with Public Sector Personnel Consultants. As the name suggests, all we do is personnel consulting for the public sector. That's really it. We're kind of a one-trick pony in that aspect. We have a very narrow lane and we stay in it. So we answer these kind of questions all across the country. We do a good percentage of our work in California, a lot of work in the LA area. Very familiar with this conversation around total compensation. How do we stack up salary schedule to salary schedule? How do we stack up total compensation to total compensation? How do we factor in the value of our benefits, our certification pays? How do we compete in terms of time off, leave, admin leave, vacation time? All of those factors. How do we roll all of that up into an intelligent, data-driven conversation? And that's really what we're here to talk about and to go over. So maybe kind of high level to start, maybe first and foremost, a couple things that the study is not. Sometimes that's a helpful kind of disclaimer. Right up front, no one's being let go as part of this process. I know as soon as people hear HR and consultant and Bob, they start thinking office space and we're moving people's staplers. And that's not the case at all. So just kind of right up front, that's not part of the study. It's not a staffing needs analysis where we're going through and saying, hey, you have 3 people in this group, but if you just worked 2 of them harder, you could get rid of this. That's not what this study is at all. So I know sometimes there's concerns around that. It's also in no way superseding the bargaining process. So nothing that we say just because we put it in Excel doesn't make it so. We're here to make recommendations. We're here for our data to live at the table. We're here to make sure this is an open, transparent, and clear exercise. Most organizations do this every 4 to 6 years. I think it's been closer to 15 or 16 years since a study like this has been done. So it's about time that we look through citywide and say, does the job title make sense? Does the job description accurately reflect what you do? And what's the going market rate? Those are the 3 things we're going to answer. Notice none of those were a performance review. We're not here to say, are you good at your job? We're also not here to say how you should run your city. We're not here saying, hey, if you were to restructure this and give this person more responsibility, and if we were to change the working conditions, then we could do this. That's kind of not part of the study. What we're trying to answer is, like we'd said a couple times, consistency around titling protocols and to make sure we have an accurate, established market rate so that we can recruit and retain quality staff. If you do one of these studies well, that's where we end up. We can recruit the right people and we can keep our employees because we're not getting a hometown discount or we're not taking advantage of our employees. We have a fair market rate for the work that's being performed. You can start to see a little bit how essential it is that we know what the kind of work that's being performed is. It becomes very important that we understand what it is that the employees are doing and that we're not just guessing as a third party, as an outside entity, that we're not guessing at what the work is. So we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but we need all of the employees, we need their help to tell us what it is that you do. We're not coming in to tell you what to do. We need to learn from you so that you can tell us what it is that you do. So that's a little bit of that side of the study. Conversely, every time we say compensation, their ears start to perk up. They start to say, okay, how much are we going to get as a result of this study? Best advice I can give everybody is don't go buy a new truck. Don't expect a windfall. Don't expect a huge increase as a result of the study. I've done enough of these studies all across the country to say, there's going to be some jobs that by happy accident, you're paying okay. You might be in one of those jobs, you might not be. We don't know yet. We don't know what we're going to find until we go through this process. So the best advice I can give you is don't expect anything as a result of the study. Nobody's being let go. Nobody's winning the lottery. You still work for a city. We're here to answer the question, what's the going market rate? It's also going to be a little bit varied. Some jobs are probably going to move differently than others. We'll talk about this here in a little bit, but from a compensation side of things, one of the outcomes often is jobs that used to be on the same range, sometimes now aren't, where one job might move faster than the other job because of the market factors at play. So again, this is not the process by which everybody gets a raise. It's not the process by which everything goes up 3% or something like that. That's COLA, that's bargaining. That's what you guys normally do. I think you're covered under an existing contract for another 18 months or something like that. So none of this supersedes that process. This is in addition to that to say, what's the going market rate? Where are we now? And how do we move from where we are to where we want to be? So nobody's being let go. Don't go buy a boat. Somewhere in the middle, like all things, is kind of where this falls. All right, let me talk about classification here for a minute. Then I'll pause for the first round of questions. So classifications may be an overly complicated way of saying, does the job title make sense? And does the job description accurately reflect what you do? If you take a look at your existing job descriptions, how much of time is spent in everybody's favorite bullet point, which is other duties as assigned? How much time are you spending there? How accurate is this job description in summarizing your functions and tasks and duties? Maybe it's great. Maybe it's perfect. Maybe it's just been written and everything's great. Perfect. Awesome. But maybe there's some other ones that need updating. Think about the job titles. So part of the classification is there's around about 400 some odd non-uniformed, non-sworn employees. So we don't need to hear from every single police officer, every single firefighter. We don't need them to take the time to go through the questionnaires. That would get pretty redundant pretty quick. We just need one or two really good questionnaires representing each rank so that we can make sure the job descriptions for the ranks are accurate and so that we can make sure we find the right rank out in the market. It's pretty easy in the paramilitary organizations like that, but we just want to make sure that we understand what it is in each one of those ranks. So not every single firefighter, police officer, we don't need to hear from all of those groups because you can work on these questionnaires as part of the group. I'll get into that in a little bit. But we got about 400 some odd employees that are in maybe 325 some odd job titles, where we want to make sure we have every employee accounted for. We want to make sure we understand what it is that the employees do so that we can go through and suggest job titles. Since it's been a little bit of time since the study's been done, I'm going to guess we have some inconsistencies in how we talk about specialist or coordinator or analyst or technician or 1 or 2 or 3, senior, lead, supervisor, man, right? You know, maybe one department's specialist is another department's coordinator is another department's analyst. So making sure we have titling protocols and use terms consistently across various departments is part of this study. Also, you know, imagine if we get some questionnaires back, we get these questionnaires back and two people have the same job title and we lay these questionnaires next to each other and they're doing wildly different things, okay? Maybe you see an instance where two people used to have the same job titles and we split them apart. And now where there was one job title, there's now two job titles. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe we have instances where there are employees, they have two different titles. We get these questionnaires back and they're doing the same thing. So maybe we merge those titles together and have one title where we used to have two. You know, if you're doing the same thing, but in different departments, I think we're okay with that. You know, if the verbs are the same, but the nouns are different, you know, that can make sense as long as there's not certifications or special requirements or anything that's, you know, really unusual about that. Maybe we see a couple titles merged together. We want to make sure that the job descriptions are specific enough that you can find the right person if you were to go out and hire for that job. So some of those factors start to get into classification. All right, so here's the real important part, the PAQ, the Position Analysis Questionnaire. Hopefully you can start to see how important it is that we know what it is that the employees do. That we have a pretty clear picture of what your job entails so that we don't have to guess at it. If you tell us, hey, write a job description for an accounting technician, we could do that, but it would probably be wrong. It wouldn't capture the nuances, the uniquenesses that are your city. So that's why we have the opportunity for every employee to go through and complete a questionnaire. I'll walk through it here at the end. The link is going to go out. Everybody's going to get an email, not next month. So next Monday. So not on Friday, but next Monday, an email is going to go out with a link on it. You can click on that link, start a new questionnaire. We walk all the employees through every single page. It's got, I'm sitting in front of my door here, kind of walking everybody through what we're looking for on each individual page so that we can have everybody kind of on the same wavelength in terms of what we're looking for. So again, we're looking for the employees to tell us directly what it is that you do so that we can do those things. So we can suggest a job title and update the job description. Final portion of this is there might be an opportunity for us to come out and to meet with individual employees, kind of read over those questionnaires, have some questions and be like, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about this? Can you give me some more details here? And honestly, it's a little bit of a selfish opportunity for us to learn about the jobs more, to have a conversation, to hear a little bit about it, to just get a better idea of what that job is so that we can complete those 3 tasks. So if HR reaches out to you and says, hey, can you show the consultants around? Can you meet with us? That's all that we're trying to do there. We're not sure how to always do that in the COVID era. Sometimes it might be a Zoom meeting, as much as those are a little bit less fun. It's a little bit of a better idea than saying have, one person talk with, 100 employees. That's not always the wisest idea. So anyway, it's just an opportunity to learn more about the jobs so that we can suggest a job title, update the job description, find the job out in the market. Okay. So let me pause there before I jump into the salary survey, before I jump into compensation. Are there any questions on the classification side of things that anybody has? You can unmute yourself, you can raise your hand, you can put it in the chat, however you want to ask a question. Feel free. Give everyone a minute and then we'll go on to kind of the next section here in compensation. Okay, so if there's no questions, I'll jump on to compensation. Usually the thing people tend to care the most about. So ultimately, the first question in compensation is we need to establish the market going rate. First question anybody should have is, who are you going to compare me with? What is the market? How do we define that? So first and foremost, it's where do we lose people to? Where do we recruit people from? If you don't sell the house, you don't pull the kids out of school, you commute in a different direction, what would they pay you? Which organizations did you drive through or drive past on the way to get here today? That's where we start our list. So we drop a pin kind of in Escondido, and then we go out in a radius from there. We're trying to find similar jobs. So we want to look which towns, which cities do employees live in? Where do we have a density of our employees? And who has similar services? So we're more interested that the job is the same, maybe than that the organization is the same. So it might be made up of bigger, might be made up of smaller. So when we started the study, each MOU contains a list of agreed upon comparators. And one of the first things we did is meet with all the union representatives and ask the question, hey, do these comparators work? And pretty much universally, everybody had said, hey, we weren't here when those are picked. We don't know how they got into the bargaining agreements. We would like to talk about new comparators. So we're opening that can of worms. We're starting to have that conversation and to make sure that that conversation takes place in an open and transparent way with the union representatives, with city management, so that we can say, all right, as the outside party, here's who we would pick. Here's who has similar cost of living, similar populations. Here's where your employees live. Here's where they're commuting to. Here's who's similar financially to you. Here's what that picture looks like. Because at the end of the day, I need to find similar jobs, right? You have a lot of services. We need to make sure we find those jobs out in the market. I'm not, like I said before, I'm more interested that the job is the same. If I want to take kind of an easy example of a mechanic or a job like that, you could go be, if you're one of 10 here, you could go be one of 5 somewhere else or one of 15 at a different organization. And that doesn't necessarily fundamentally change the nature of the job. unless we have certain different ASC requirements or we're working on different machinery or things like that. Now that starts to change the nature of the job. But the size of the organization tends to have less of an effect lower down the salary schedule. As we go higher up the salary schedule, when we start talking about larger organizations, that tends to play in more. Or if we have a smaller organization, that tends to matter more. So we get a little bit more size sensitive as we go up the food chain a little bit. But ideally, we'd end up with maybe somewhere on the order of 15 comparators that are universal enough that can be shared across all of the groups. And then from there, maybe we end up with maybe only 10 have fire, maybe 10, maybe a slightly different 10 have police, maybe 8 or 9 have water, and we start to just get a universal bucket that we can draw from. And what it looks like for every individual job might be slightly different, but we kind of have a universal basket to choose from. What that ends up looking like is something like this. So you start to see where we can go through and do a market analysis, and we can say, what's the going market rate? How do you stack up salary schedule to salary schedule? What is your salary range maximum in relationship to the salary range maximums out in the market? How do we look total compensation to total compensation? Imagine a world in which we're 5% behind on salary, but 5% ahead on benefits. Is that okay? Do we win? Do we like that? Now you start to see how this is a bargaining conversation. Now you start to see how this is city council. This is philosophy. How do we go from where we are to where we want to be? What if this job is, 8% behind, but close on total comp? Well, I don't know that I'm okay with them underpaying you because benefits are so good, or vice versa. So these start to become pretty difficult, almost philosophical conversations about what do we value? What's the cost of that, right? We can't, we had someone the other day, look at us as a result of the salary and say, hey, I can't eat my benefits. And I loved that phrase because it's true. You can't. The rate that's offered, the salary range minimum, the salary range maximums, the going market rates matter a lot, but you can't take benefits away. And the benefits is a significant portion of the city's expenses for a job. So we need to look at this in a totality, in a large picture to say, how do we stack up salary schedule to salary schedule? How do we stack up total compensation to total compensation? Starts to look a little bit like this. So you can imagine this for almost every job at the city. Start to look at how do we stack up salary schedule, and then different columns here for different relationships to market. So start to think in terms here of how do we look for medical contributions? How do we look for contributions to retirement? So first column here, medical premiums. Think health, dental, vision. What's the maximum amount an employer is willing to contribute to employee plus family medical premiums? Okay. Medical, dental, vision, what's the maximum amount I'm getting while an employee? We're starting to see these become tiered. We're starting to see where these are an instance where, it's like, hey, if you're hired before 2016, you get X. If you're hired after it, you get Y. We're starting to see a lot of people, so you see a lot of variation in these numbers. Start to look at retirement contributions as kind of the center column. Give me normal cost contributions to CalPERS for the classic plan. Give me deferred compensation. Give me contributions towards employee retirement, medical premiums until Medicare eligibility age. We start to get a lot of really specifics. Give me, there's starting to be some like, oh, I can cash in unused sick time towards my health insurance premiums, right? Like, again, how do we normalize all of the data out in the market so that we can track it and add it to the salary ranges? Final column, education, longevity, certification pays. This starts to matter a lot in police and fire. This is a significant portion of employees' take-home pay, is all of the ad pays, all of the extras, all of the other things you can add. Think education, bilingual, certifications pay, education pay, all of those different factors for what we can add to the employee's salary range maximum. I don't tend to add overtime into this because that's very individualized, but we do look at how do we stack up in terms of paid time off or callback pay or some of those other factors that live in a separate matrix that aren't as easy to add to a salary range maximum as a 15% certification pay or something of that nature. Okay, so that's what that looks like there from a salary survey side of things. Now you start to see how many moving parts this is. You start to see some of the possible outcomes. From a classification side of things, possible outcomes start to look like maybe we have some job titles that are unused, that are vacant, that we don't have anybody in, and we can go ahead and remove them from the salary schedule. So a little bit of house cleaning. Maybe we remove some unneeded duplicate titles. Maybe we have some instances where there are titles that have similar functions, similar authority, similar duties. We can merge those together. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe we have the same job titles. We need to split them apart. Again, we tend to get some of those questions at the end of a study. I used to have the same job title as this person. Now I don't. Why? What's going on? Okay, yeah, it's because of this, and here's what the PAQs look like. Those are some possible outcomes. Possible outcomes for adjusting to market. Again, we've done enough of these studies. I've never held a meeting like this and had somebody ask a question or raise their hand and say, I'm really glad you're here. I go into HR every 2 weeks and I tell them I'm overpaid and they just won't take money away from me, right? I've never had anybody tell me that. So there's a little bit of a different thing when an objective third party comes in and says, hey, here are the 55 positions that were more than 5% behind market. And here's how we move from where we are now to where we need to be. So, right, so it's a little bit of a different conversation when it's meant to be a data-driven, factual conversation where that information lives at the table and can be discussed, and all parties from the bargaining units to council can kind of see what's going on. So a couple possible outcomes of the classification or the compensation side of things. Maybe we have some jobs that need to move. Maybe there's some jobs that are behind market, and some jobs need to move more than others. So again, remember that example of maybe beforehand we have two jobs that are on the same salary range. One job is okay, but one is behind market, and we need to increase that other job. So maybe we have jobs that used to be on the same range that are now on different ranges. Maybe we have some jobs where the range needs to move faster than the person. And let me kind of explain that one a little bit, because it can be a little bit unusual. If it's been 15 some odd years since we've done a study, you might not be able to fix it in a year. This might take some time to unravel. I don't know, right? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe we can triage this and fix it quickly. I don't know what's going to happen, but let's pretend we have a job and everybody's sitting at maximum, and that job is 15% behind market. Okay, so maybe what we need to do is take that range and increase it. Move that range 15%, and then take the employees who were on maximum and put them on midpoint, or step 3 of the new range. They didn't go down. We didn't take any money away from them. They actually got a little bit of money to move on to that step. Then over the next 3 years, through their step process, they can work their way towards maximum of the new range. They were previously topped out. They're not getting anything. Now they have 15% extra earning potential available to them. Maybe we have to crack that way. Maybe it's smaller. Maybe maybe we have some jobs that are less out of alignment with the market, and we can honor step rates where we can say, hey, you were maxed out before. We got to move the range 5%. We're going to give you that 5%, and you're maxed out again. Maybe we can do it that way. Again, I don't know. You start to see how many different factors come into play before it hits an employee's paycheck. So again, don't go buy a boat is the best advice we can give anybody. Like I said, this has been a while since a study like this has been done. It might take a little bit of time to unravel it and to address some of the findings. Okay, let me pause there before. I'm going to walk through the PAQ in a little bit of detail here next. Let me pause for a minute, so I can answer any questions. Any questions on the compensation side of things that we talked about? Okay. I don't see anyone's hands up or any questions in the chat. Okay, so we'll move on to the PAQs. Again, we'll have some questions at the end. And also, you can always stick around and ask any questions. But again, if you have a question, maybe somebody who's watching this recording has a question too. So feel free to pipe in. Totally fine. Want to make sure we can answer any questions that are out there, because this is a study, like I said, this hasn't been done in a while. We want to make sure everybody understands the process, and there's nothing that I forgot to mention today. All right, so the PAQ, you can, again, hopefully we're starting to understand the importance of this is your voice in this process. This is your ability to tell us what it is that you do. This isn't a performance review. You can work on these questionnaires as a group. If you have the same job title as maybe 5 or 10 other people, and you want to sit around and you all work on them together, send it in, that's great. If you do something a little bit different than one of your coworkers, you have the same job title, but there's a different nuance, well, maybe you should work on them individually and send them in. We'll leave that to you. You know your jobs better than we do at this point. So however you want to get us that information works well for us. So all the employees are going to receive an email on Monday with a link to start a new questionnaire. It's going to say this in the email, but I'll say it here and we remind you in the video. The link that you're going to get on Monday will start a new questionnaire. So every time you click on that link, it's going to start a new questionnaire. I'll show you how to save and come back to your PAQ. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But this one is to create a new questionnaire, and you can work on them as a team. You can work on them as a group, maybe print out your existing job description, mark it out, cross it up. However you want to do that works for us. It's not meant to be a test or a writing assignment. We want to have all the employees get their PAQs over to us by December 3rd. So you have a little bit of time to work on it. Please avoid the college homework problem, where if we give you 2.5 weeks, you take 18 days before you start it, so you start it on day 17, maybe start it, go through the process, read through some of the questions, save it, send yourself the link so that you can come back to it and work on it. And then we'll have you, once you click submit, an email goes to your supervisor, and the supervisors will provide their comments, their understanding of the position by the 10th of December. We want to have 2 eyes on the PAQ. Remember, our goal here is to make sure we have an accurate understanding of the position and what it entails. So the more eyes on that, the better. And that's kind of the idea behind having the supervisor review it. We'll show you what that looks like. You get a copy in your email. Supervisor gets a copy. Whenever they make comments or notes, you get a copy of what those are. Again, transparency. We want to make sure everybody has an accurate understanding and we're all on the same page. So that's the idea there. Okay, let me jump into this. First page is you're going to select from a drop-down menu your department, your job title, your name, your email. All of that comes pre-populated from the payroll file. One of the biggest questions we get is the information on the payroll file wasn't correct. What should we do? That's okay. You can edit that information on page 2. If your job title's not right, the email's not right, you can go ahead and type it, replace it. We will only use the information that's on this page to send the emails and to review the PAQs. So if it wasn't right on the payroll file, that's okay. You can edit it on page 2, no big deal. It's also going to ask, are you working on this as part of a group? If you're working on it as part of a group, it'll bring you to another page where you can tag all of the employees who are working on it. So it works just like Facebook or Instagram. Start to type their name, it will auto-suggest it. Click on their name and it'll add them to the PAQ so that you can turn in a group questionnaire. First couple pages are the hardest. They're the blankest. They require the most maybe creative writing. Start to look here at question number 9, the position's purpose, kind of the high-level purpose of this job. If you think about your existing job description, maybe give us 3 to 5 sentences about what it is that this job does. Another way to think about it is if I were to say, hi, I'm Bob. It's nice to meet you. What do you do? Put that there. Tell us what it is that you do, and we can cover that and look at that. We have job description writers that we kind of lock in a closet, throw food to. They'll make it sound like it belongs on a job description. You don't have to use all the correct tenses. We'll figure all that out. Just give us the content, give us the meat, help us to understand what it is the position does, and we'll go from there. Next question, I think we actually moved this to the back of the questionnaire now, but if there's any comparable job titles, if you're starting to get mailers from other cities that say, hey, we noticed you had a certification in this, and here's the job, and here's the flyer for how we're offering $10,000 more. Any of those things that you're seeing out there that you want to make us aware of, go ahead and tell us about it. We'll take a look at that. Not necessarily we agree with that assessment of that job is the same as your job, but we'll start looking there. We have to read through all the MOUs, the org charts, the bargaining agreements. We have a lot of work ahead of us. So I want to make sure that it is of value and we don't miss anything if you point it out. We want to make sure we take a look at that for you. Okay, so the next thing here on the very top, you'll see on every page is save and continue later. This is a really important button if you want to save and continue later. It's your best friend. So if you click on this button, a drop down is going to come out, type in your email, it'll send you a new link. So the email comes from Survey Gizmo or Alchemer. That's who hosts this online platform. We created the questionnaire. We created all of the video. They're the tech back end that hosts this. So you'll get an email from them with a note saying like, hey, here's the link to return to your survey or to come back to your PAQ. So that's what that looks like. This next page here, again, I'm going to kind of say is the hardest page. It's everybody's least favorite page, but it's my favorite page. Here's where we're going to ask where you're spending a percentage of your time. What are your functions, tasks, duties? Think about your existing job description, those bullet points. This is where we're going to generate those bullet points from. This is where the majority of the content from the job description is created. So over here in a percentage of time, maybe think about breaking your job up into a day, a week, a month, maybe a year. If your job's very seasonal and changes, summer to winter, then think of it in a percentage of time in a year. If the job's very routine and never really changes, maybe that percentage of time is closer to like a day or something like that. However you want to do that, it's fine by us. We're just trying to get an idea of where you spend a majority of your time. And then maybe 3 to 5 sentences in this box over here about what your functions and tasks and duties are. And again, if you're having a hard time getting started, maybe you print out your existing job description, talk to your supervisor, talk to some coworkers, however you want to get us this content works for us. It's going to start to get easier on the next couple pages. Here we have the knowledge, skills, and information sources. What do you need to be knowledgeable of? What do you need to be skilled in order to safely and competently perform this position? What kind of information sources do you need to know? Government regulations, building codes, whatever it is that we need to be aware of and need to be knowledgeable in. Give us some idea there. It doesn't need to be an exhaustive list. The job description is never intended to be a manual to do the job. We just need to get enough high-level information so that we can make sure we can recruit and retain the right people and that we have the right job out in the market. Start to see as we get a little further along, these are more fill in the blanks, check the box kind of things. Here's your education, maybe put on your human resources hat for a minute. Pretend you had to go out and recruit for this position. What do you have? And then what would you want the other person to have? What would you want someone to have in terms of minimum years of experience, minimum education? Do we need to have a bachelor's degree in engineering, accounting, finance? What do we need to be degreed in? And then what is our years of experience? And then finally down here, what about certifications? Do I have to be certified in anything? Do I have to be licensed? And then do I need that license on day one? Am I a bus driver and that bus isn't moving at 7 a.m. Monday morning unless I have my CDL and a passenger endorsement? Or can you train me to get this over time and I can maybe get it over the next 90 days or 6 months or a year? And then when I get it, I move from a 1 to a 2 or something like that. Give us an idea of what this picture looks like. Switching gears a little bit, there's only 2 pages left, so you're doing great. We're almost there. We want to start to get into maybe some of the authority, the accountability, the autonomy of the position. What does your relationship with your supervisor look like? Is this an instance where, you come into work and they say, hey, thanks for coming in today. You have 10 things to do today. Here's where task number 1's located. Here's how you do task number 1. Okay, you have a question. Here's the answer. All right, you're done. Let me review your work. Is that what your relationship with the supervisor looks like? Or is it, hey, congratulations on being hired. Good luck. It's probably a little closer to that second example. So where on that spectrum is what we're trying to find? We're trying to find where does this job fall? What does the line of demarcation look like? Some of these next questions here are what's your level of authority, accountability? What are you making decisions on? What are you the subject matter expert on? And if you don't know how to fix this, nobody else does. And you have to bring in somebody outside because you are where the responsibility falls? Or do you make recommendations? The supervisor approves it? What does this look like here? A lot of times this is what's helpful when we're looking at 1s and 2s and 3s and seniors and leads and, technicians versus analysts or specialists. How are we using some of those terms? What decisions are we making? What decisions are we asking other people to make? Final sections here, anything other relevant information, anything we forgot to mention, anything else that you think is helpful for us to know or understand, you can attach to the PAQ. You can upload files, anything like that that you think is helpful for us to know or to see. Feel free to put those in there, and then we can review that information and get back to you. So final section here is, do you supervise employees? If you supervise employees, say yes. It'll bring you to another page where you can go through and give us their names and job titles and a quick hire and fire matrix to be able to say, I make recommendations, I approve time off. If somebody's sick, they call me, and then we, fill in for that. We move schedules around. We, take care of that. I train employees, go through to say, what do you have authority to make decisions on? What do you make recommendations on? What does that look like there? And then it brings you to the final page. Just click and drag to sign this. If you're on a tablet, you can sign it like you're at the grocery store, and then type your name in. And when you click next, an email is going to go to your supervisor. That's going to say, hey, a position analysis questionnaire needs your review and approval. It's going to be attached to the PDF. It's going to have the employee's name on it. And there's going to be a link that's specially targeted so that you can provide feedback on just that questionnaire. Supervisors, you cannot change anything the employees wrote. We are looking for your understanding of the position. Remember, our purpose is to make sure the job title is accurate, that the job description reflects what the employee is doing, and find this job out in the market. That's what our goal is. So we need another set of eyes. We need another piece of review on this. This is a great time to tell us anything you think we need to know for this position. Are we having a difficult time retaining people? Has this position been open for 9 months and nobody can fill it because we're offering a comically low rate? What does it look like here? What's the market picture? What do you know? What do you think is helpful for us to do our job? You can give us the comments there. At the end of that, an email is going to go out with your comments, are going to go to the employee as well as a copy for yourself. So again, transparency. Everybody can see what is being recorded and being used for the study. All right. Whew. It's about as fast as I can talk through that. I want to make sure we have any time for any questions anybody has. And if you have any questions, now is a great time to ask them. I think you can unmute yourself if you have questions, or you can raise your hand, or you can type them into the chat box to send them to the group or just to me. However you want to ask questions, I'm happy to answer them. In one of the earlier meetings, we got a question on time frame. So it's going to take us about 120 days to finish. We're going to try to have an answer back to HR and finance and the bargaining units to say, if we wanted to do this, here's the positions that are out of market. If we want to get them caught up to market, here's what that costs. We're going to try to have all that information by the spring so that you can go from there. We have a question that says, what can I do if I have a question later? Great question there. Reach out to HR. They're going to send out an FAQ. So you can reach out to Jennifer in HR and she'll answer any questions or send them over to us. If we start to see a lot of the same questions, we'll make sure to update those FAQs and get back to you. So if you have any questions, reach out to HR. If they can't answer them, they'll forward them on to us and we'll answer them. Next question is, will this recording be available for reviewing while filling out the PAQ? Yes. So we're going to record this. We're going to post it to YouTube. We got a bunch of videos on YouTube talking about classification. Kind of a big deal. They have like 7-8 views. I'm going to monetize those and retire. So yes, this video will be out there. And then on the PAQ itself, on the top of every page, is a video of me narrating and kind of going over something similar on every page. So we want to try to make sure that you have that. If you have any questions during it, again, you can shoot an email over and we can answer any questions that you have. Good question. If you fill in form in a group, Oh, but have different supervisors. Does the system send email to both supervisors? Really good question. So if you have the same job title, but different supervisors, right now it does not. So when you select the dropdown, it would only give you the email address of the supervisor who is directly assigned to the person that selected their name on page 1. On page 2, you can put in 2 email addresses if you separate them by a semicolon, and it'll send it to 2 different people. So you can do that, and then 2 different supervisors will get emails to review the same questionnaire. And then on that, in the supervisor review section, they can just make notes to say like, hey, I'm Bob, I supervise these people, here's what I say. Someone can say, hey, I'm Jim, I supervise people, here's what they say. And you can both make comments there. So that's how you can handle that. And then if there's anything that doesn't quite work right, reach out to HR, they can let us know, and we can make sure that those comments get recorded on the PAQ. So yeah, great questions. Great questions, thank you. Okay, I think those were all the questions in the chat. Anything else? Any other questions before we go ahead and we can end the recording and we can get you out of here a little bit early and you can get back to your day? Any other questions? No? Okay. All right. Well, thanks for your time. I'll go ahead and end the recording, and I'll stick around for a few minutes in case there's anything somebody didn't want to ask in front of the group. You can ask me. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.